This is where it happens. Renton, Washington. A factory so large it has its own zip code, its own weather patterns inside. Every day, hundreds of workers come here to build something they believe in. A machine so precise, so unforgiving, that a single missing component can mean the difference between routine and catastrophe. By 2018, this factory was running faster than it ever had. Faster than it was designed to. Faster than was safe. The men and women on the line could feel it. Some of them said so. Nobody listened. To understand what happened, you have to go back to a single morning in December 2010, when Boeing's greatest rival did something that changed everything. Airbus announced the A320neo, a re-engined, fuel-sipping aircraft that promised airlines 15 to 20% better fuel economy than anything Boeing offered. Airlines lined up. Airbus gathered over 1,000 orders before Boeing had finished reading the room. Then, in July 2011, the wound deepened. American Airlines, Boeing's most faithful customer for decades, announced it was buying 130 Airbus jets. Boeing's board met. The pressure was existential. They had two choices: spend a decade building an entirely new aircraft or re-engine the 737, a design from 1967, and get it into the air fast. They chose fast. And to make the new engines fit a fuselage designed half a century earlier, engineers had to move them forward and upward on the wing. That changed how the aircraft handled at the edge of a stall. So they built a software patch to correct it. They called it MCAS. They decided pilots didn't need to know about it. In the summer of 2018, a senior Boeing manager named Ed Pearson stood on the Renton factory floor and felt something he had never felt in 30 years working around aircraft. Fear. Workers were running on fumes, chronically short on parts, under relentless pressure to keep the line moving, to keep the deliveries flowing, to keep the MAX competitive. Pearson had served in the United States Navy. He knew what a system in crisis looked like, and he put it in writing. He told Boeing's 737 general manager that his internal warning bells were going off, that for the first time in his life he was hesitant to put his own family on a Boeing airplane. He was brushed aside. So he went higher, to the general counsels, to the CEO, to the board. "Shut the factory down," he said. "Something is wrong." They didn't shut it down. October 29, 2018. Lion Air Flight 610 lifts off from Jakarta at 6:20 in the morning. The plane is 13 minutes into its service life. The passengers are asleep, or talking, or watching the lights of the city disappear beneath the clouds. 12 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft enters an uncontrollable dive. The pilots fight. They pull. They don't know what is pushing back against them. Because no one told them MCAS existed. The plane hits the Java Sea at nearly 700 kilometers per hour. 189 people are gone. 8 days later, Boeing sends airlines a bulletin. It is the first time pilots have ever read the name MCAS. Boeing promises a software fix. Weeks, they say. Maybe a few weeks. What followed is perhaps the most damning chapter of all. Not the crash itself, but the silence after it. Boeing did not ground the aircraft. The FAA did not ground the aircraft. Ed Pearson sent his warnings again, to leadership, to the board. Again, nothing. Across the world, in Addis Ababa, the chief pilot of Ethiopian Airlines sent Boeing an urgent message requesting MCAS technical details. The email was marked urgent. Boeing did not respond. The 737 MAX continued to fly. Hundreds of flights a day, carrying tens of thousands of people on a plane with a software system that could seize control from the pilots at any moment, triggered by a single faulty sensor no bigger than your fist. The weeks passed. The fix didn't come. And then the morning of March 10th arrived. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. 157 people from 35 countries, a development worker, a grandmother returning home, a 28-year-old woman named Camille Jeffrey, traveling for work. The plane lifts off at 5:38 in the morning. 6 minutes later, it is over. The first officer's voice on the cockpit recorder, in the final seconds, says three words: pitch up, pitch up. MCAS is pushing the aircraft toward the Earth. The pilots have followed every Boeing procedure. Every one. It makes no difference. The plane strikes a field near the town of Bishoftu and leaves a crater. An investigation would later find that if Boeing had answered Ethiopian Airlines safety questions after Lion Air, just answered the email, this might not have happened. The 737 MAX was grounded for 21 months. Boeing lost $40 billion in market value in the days after the Ethiopian crash alone. Cumulative losses crossed $35 billion. The CEO was fired. Airbus took Boeing's place as the world's largest aerospace company. In January 2024, 5 years on, a door plug blew off a brand new 737 MAX 9 over Portland, Oregon, at 16,000 feet. 4 bolts. Simply never installed. The NTSB found what Ed Pearson had been saying for years. Boeing's manufacturing culture was broken. The FAA hadn't been watching. In May 2025, the Department of Justice reached a deal with Boeing. No criminal trial, no conviction. In a federal courthouse in Fort Worth, the families of the 346 dead were invited to speak. Catherine Berthet flew from France. Her daughter Camille was 28 when she boarded Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. Berthet looked at the court and said what all of them were feeling. Victims can't be bought. Outside, the 737 MAX was still flying, still carrying people. Still, to Boeing, the backbone of its future. The bolt that was never installed. The warning that was never heeded. The email that was never answered. It was never just about a software system. It was about what a company decided mattered, and what, in the end, it decided didn't.